I'd like to start by thanking you again, Jock, for joining us and talking at half time of the game against Ayr United. Obviously, Rovers and Ayr, two of your former clubs. If it's okay with you, we'll start by getting into it. We'll start by talking about your early career. You came through the ranks at Motherwell and played 20 matches for the Steelmen. And it's where you first met Frank Connor, who was assistant to Jock Wallace. Now, not wanting to put words in your mouth, but what was it like learning your trade under two fearsome characters in Jock and Frank Connor?
Oh, Neil, the two of them are absolutely brilliant. Similar characters, but very honest people. Good to work for, and I learnt a lot of both of them, especially Frank. I've known Frank. I used to go and train at Celtic Park, the S-Forms, on a Tuesday. Frank and Jimmy Johnson, funny enough, would take the training. So that was my first introduction to Frank.
Also at Fir Park, as well as coming into the team and making your mark in the team there, you had a season alongside Paul Smith, who is obviously now the assistant manager at Raith Rovers. What do you remember of playing and training with Smudger, as he was known back then?
I remember Smudger came, it was pre-season, he just signed. I think maybe might have shared a room with Smudger. Paul came to Motherwell, and Andy Harrow went to Raith Rovers. I'm pretty sure that was the case. And Andy kind of looked after me at Motherwell as well, and I still call him Father to this day. So Andy was a big part of my football career as well, and his wife Jill. So I kind of knew what was coming because Paul always spoke about Raith Rovers.
And as you were coming through the ranks at Motherwell, you were telling me that you signed on the same day as Tam Boyd, a fact I'd forgotten about, and you played with people like Gary McAllister, Andy Walker, Chris Marquardt, and Stevie Kerr. It must have been a great grounding as a young man coming into the game.
Oh, it was great for me, Neil. I mean, I was probably one of the youngest. I signed the same day, the same table as Tom Boyd. It was actually Frank that signed the two of us. I signed part-time, and the club got me a job as an apprentice painter with one of the directors' company. And Big Tam, he signed the YTS, so he went full-time in that. So we took different paths. I went part-time, and funny enough, there was only 4 part-timers at Motherwell at the time. Ian McLeod was part-time, Big Marsh. Brian McClare was part-time because Brian was at university. Myself and another young player called Paul McFadden. So it was just the 4 of us that was part-time.
Your time at Motherwell came to an end, and it was Rovers that you signed for next, now managed by Frank Connor. You must have liked working with him because you were keen to join. How did Frank sell Raith Rovers to you? What did he tell you about the club before you signed up?
Well, to be honest, I've told this story before, but nobody believed me. That the story goes that I kind of knew Daz. Daz was training well. Remember the season before a couple of times, but he never signed, and he went to Raith Rovers. So I think he done okay when he went to Raith Rovers. Frank saved Daz's career, and then when they got promoted, Daz wasn't too sure where he was going to sign because he didn't drive and he couldn't get up to training. So, and I've told everybody then that Frank signed me just to be Daz's taxi driver, which I'm pretty sure there was a wee bit of, because he said to Daz, he says, don't worry about it. He says, I'm going to sign McStay for Motherwell. So Frank didn't ask me to sign. Frank told me to sign.
Okay, so back in the days where that still happened, and managers and agents and parents, I assume, told you who you were signing for.
Aye, he needed a taxi driver for Daz, so they signed me.
Did you ever think you'd end up staying for 7 years and playing over 300 games for the Rovers? Was there any sign in the early days that you thought you'd end up being a long 7 player?
No, not really, Neil. I didn't think for one moment I'd stay there as long, because when I actually signed, I signed as a midfield player, and I'm pretty sure I played 1 pre-season game in midfield. The second game, somebody might correct me, but I think it first or second game. The second game, I started in midfield, and I think Billy Heard was right back at the time, and he got injured, and Frank moved me back to right back for that game. And that was, I'd never played right back before until I went to Raith Rovers, and then after my second game, I just played full back. A couple of teams at centre half and that as well. But Frank actually turned me into a full back from a midfielder. I actually signed as a midfielder, but he made me into a right back.
Yeah. And at Raith Rovers, similar to Motherwell, Motherwell, you had lots of promising youngsters and some older experienced heads like Hugh Sproat, the goalie. At Rovers, you were joined by the likes of Cammy Fraser, Alex Brash, and Bobby Glennie later on, as well as Hamish McAlpine. Good to get that mix.
When I first Neil, it was Paul, me, and myself were the two younger guys. Were probably 21, and the rest, it was a big age gap with guys like Hamish, Jimmy Marshall. Jimmy Marshall was a great player for the Rovers, and what you seen is what you got with Jimmy. And Jimmy was a tough guy with a few words every game with Jimmy, but it was all for the best. Jimmy was a winner. Colin Harris and Daz. Everybody speaks about Daz and Brewster and Daz and whoever, but Big Bomber and Daz, what a partnership they had. And it was just like, and then I think Ian Gibson signed the same time as me as well.
Aye.
I think that's probably why I never got a game in midfielder. But with a lot of experienced players, and I was probably one. I think Frank, I kind of surprised Frank. I got into the team earlier than he thought I would, maybe because Billy Head got injured at right back, and I didn't look back since moving back there.
Yeah, and in the course of your time under Frank Connor at Raith Rovers, you're involved in lots of memorable games. Ones that stand out are 7-1 against East Fife in the Derby game, and then very obviously the two cup ties when we were pulled out of the hat against Graham Souness's Rangers. Drawing with them at Starks Park and taking them to a midweek replay at Ibrox. It must have been something else to test yourself against England nationals and top level Scottish players as well in those cup games.
Yeah, I think I scored in the East Fife 7-1 game. I think I scored a goal in that game.
You did, aye.
But the games against Rangers were brilliant because we were part time, and I think the original game got cancelled. We were up in the hotel, got cancelled 3 or 4 times, and we ended up playing the Monday night, and it was all the stadium was packed. It was brilliant, and it was all the big stars, as you say, for Rangers. 2 things stick out from that night. It was like Graham Souness was a sub, and it just goes to show you how much a professional the guy was. When it was 0-0 with probably 10-15 minutes to go, he brought his cell phone for a bit to see the game out, and a couple of minutes to go, Chris Woods had the ball, passed it to Graham Roberts, who passed it across to Terry Butcher, and they just kept the ball. It was like all the Rangers fans were going mad. So Souness was like, I was at the back with big Ronnie Coyle, the two were standing, and Souness said to us, right son, go and get the ball. And we were like, nah, just keep it there. We were on £250 for a win and 500 for a draw, so we were like, no, just keep the ball down there. And then just the very last header of the ball, big Colin Harris hit the bar. Hit the bar. That was some victory. And then I think we went to Ibrox and we beat 6-2 or something, was it?
I think, yeah, if memory serves right, in the first game, I think we lost 4-1. We lost 4-1.
Yeah. We beat 6-2 a couple of years later. It was
League Cup, yeah. And it was Davy Lloyd. Davy Lloyd gave us the lead at Ibrox in the replay.
Davy scored that game. I think I put a near post flick, and Davy put it away.
Aye, exactly. Yeah. There's a classic photo of you in midair with flicking the ball on and Davy just stabbing it home. But we seemed to wake them up that night, and they came back and scored a few, didn't they?
Aye, but it was a good experience. It was good to get a good cup tie against Rangers, and 2, because they had a lot of superstars at that time against us part-timers.
And then the following season, that cup tie against Rangers again. Daz scored at the away end in front of the real Rangers. Yeah, exactly.
I think we should have won that game. We should have beaten that game. We actually done okay against Rangers, actually, at the Rovers. We had a few draws at Stars Park, and then we drew with them at Ibrox as well. We should have beat them. I think Colin Cameron missed a chance in the last kick of the ball. Was it Stevie Crawford? Can't remember. 2-2 it was.
Yeah.
Premier League. That was 93.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Obviously, things moved on. Things always move on in football. In 1990, Frank Connor had moved on to Hearts, and he was replaced by a managerial novice in Jimmy Nicholl. Still part time, but you were almost an ever present in the defence from 1990 until 1994. In particular, that season, 1992-93, when we won the league, we kicked off the league campaign in great style. I mean, another 7-goal haul where we beat St Mirren 7-0. For many Rovers supporters, it's one of the best displays of football they've ever seen by a Rovers team at Starks Park. What a way to kick off the season!
Well, that was a great game, Neil. It just summed up the season from start to finish that day. 7-0 against the team that just been relegated, and nobody thought that. So I kind of had a feeling that was our season after that game, because we had a good run before that at the end of the season before, and we carried it on to the new season and just actually romped the league.
And in the days of 2 points or a win, to win the league by, I think, 11 points it took some doing back in those days, didn't it? But we held on and managed to get the win.
I remember it was a former players do. I think it was the anniversary of the league title team, and sitting watching it behind us was every game of that season was on. It just kept glancing over, and it was like wave after wave of attack. It's just the way we played. I mean, I like getting forward myself, so it was a great team to play in.
Yeah, and but by this time you'd been joined by one of your great friends in football. I mean, you joined up with the Rovers and you were playing beside Ronnie Coyle, but then you were joined by Peter Hetherston. He really seemed to make the difference in that team that pushed us on from being almost good enough to win the league.
Yeah. Peter was just a final piece, Neil, along with when Brewster came. Brewster came before it, but Peter was just the final piece of the jigsaw, especially for me, because I just won the ball at the back and Peter was always available to take it, always there to demand the ball and take it off you. So it was good for me as well when he came.
Exactly, yeah. As well as big wins, there was also some other memorable things that you were involved in. You played in goal more than once when I think Gordon Arthur was taken off injured, and or Tom Carson was sent off, and then there was games against St Mirren where you were sent off as well. Yeah, focus on the things in goal. So it just showed that you started off as a midfielder. I remember you in your early days playing in different numbered shirts and then settling as a right back. But then you also filled in goal as well. Again, it just added to the excitement of that season when we won the league and got promotion to the Premier for the first time, didn't it?
That season was just unbelievable, Neil, because I think the fans really knew something special was happening from the first day of the season as well, because they backed us every single game after that, and it was quite an experience to be involved in that team. And the fans as well. The fans were a big part of it, because we used to go up to the Jim McMillan club after the game, because my dad would always go there after the game and before the game, and we'd go up and pick him up, but we'd probably stay in there for about 2 hours talking to people like Terry Watt, Jim McMillan himself, David Douglas would be up there as well with his family, and it was just had a connection with the fans as well, so it was really good.
Yeah, and in that season, it was such a competitive league, because obviously we won the league, but the Pars had a great team, Davy Moyes in defence and Norrie McCarthy. Ayr United had an excellent team as well, I remember, and Morton and Kelly. They all fancied themselves as having a crack at promotion, And it just was it. Do you think it was the team spirit, the togetherness that gave us the edge over lots of those excellent teams?
It was a team spirit, Neil, as well, plus a good mixture of youth and experience, and everybody knew their job. Everybody knew what they were good at. Everybody just done their piece, and it just clicked. Everything clicked. It was just like, I think we lost 4 games that season, and probably 2 of them were after we won the league. I think the last game of the season, Clydebank, we lost that, and I think Clydebank were kind of a bogey team that year. But I'm pretty sure we only lost 2 up until we won the league. We lost 2 after. So. In fact, was it Stirling Albion?
Stirling Albion, yeah.
And then Clydebank last game of the season.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was just an unbelievable season. And the first time we got beat was against Clydebank at Kilbowie. It was a midweek game. The bus broke down, and we were all late. And I remember we drove to the park. It was me, Daz, Coyley. I took the car because of the phone on the bus and just says, go straight to the pitch and we'll meet you there. And after the game we get beat, so driving out to Kilbowie, and I get stopped driving because I didn't have a seatbelt on. And the policeman came in and said, he looked in the car and he says, oh, it's the Raith Rovers lads. Instead he gave me a ticket, he just let us off because he says, your night's been bad enough losing your long beaten record. So we got off with a fine.
Fair enough. It all came good in the end, though. And when we secured our first ever promotion to the Premier League at home to Dumbarton, it was a special day. You know, supporters on the pitch, champagne in the main stand, and of course getting the trophy as well. Memories and photographs that you'll never forget as a player.
Well, funny you should say that, because at the start of lockdown, all my stuff was up the loft, and I got it all down, and I've got millions of pictures. And my son was actually the mascot that day, so that made it even more special. So, and he was only 18 months, I think. But I've still got all the old stuff up the stairs and the loft, and I brought it all down. Look at the pictures, got great pictures of that day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and great memories. We obviously got into the Premier League. That season, it ends in relegation. You played the majority of the games, but you did manage to create a goal celebration of your own when you scored against Rangers. Did any planning go into what I call the Jock McStay? Some folk call it Ravanelli, but it's actually the Jock McStay.
Well, I actually I scored against Kilmarnock. I actually done it then, but nobody noticed. It was just for a quick couple of seconds. But I'd seen it. The Italian football just started in Channel 4, and I seen a player doing that there, and I said to myself, if I score a goal, I'll do that. And then 2 or 3 weeks after that, I seen Ravanelli doing it. So everybody says it's a Ravanelli, but I don't think so. I think I've done it first.
Exactly, and what a goal to celebrate! Near post volley against your traditional rivals. You being a Celtic man and all.
Well, it was a good experience, but just going back to what we said about the team being attacking, that was Jason Robotham that crossed it. That was the other fullback, and I was in the box sticking it away. So that's how we just kept attacking in the Premier League as well. Maybe that's what we shouldn't have done that, because Kilmarnock got promoted with us that year. Tommy Burns was the manager, and he kind of changed his style of football a wee bit. Maybe if we'd have done that, who knows?
Exactly, yeah. Over the course of your Rovers career, you scored over 30 goals, but you're only on penalties for one season out of the 7. Apart from the goal against Rangers and that one against Kilmarnock you mentioned, is there any other favourite goals that stick out for you for the Rovers?
I scored a header against St Mirren the year we won the league. I scored a header against him for about 12 yards, but I think an important one that season was, it goes back to the bogey team. It was at Starks Park. We were unbeaten for a long time. Then Clydebank came and we were getting beat 2-1 with about 5 or 10 minutes to go. And I think I scored the equaliser that game as well. So, and I do remember the goal in the 7-1 game as well. We beat East Fife. That was quite memorable as well.
Oh yeah, and a great result as well. Sticking with our debut season in the Premier League, obviously the thing that's followed you around since 16th of April 1994 was the incident with Duncan Ferguson when we were playing at Ibrox. don't want to relive the whole incident because I think it's well talked about. But overall, how did that incident affect you then, and what are your reflections after 27 years on?
At the time, Neil, I think everybody says, "What did you say?" I never said a word to him. I think that him and Big Sean Dennis were having a ding dong the full match, and Big Sean was winding them up. So it just happened. The ball came across, and I took the ball off him, and he pulled me back, and I turned, and then it just bang. But at the time, it was all in the papers, and all that stuff went on. But as I get older, I get a wee bit more bitter about it, what happened, and because I believe it led to me getting released from Raith Rovers for some reason.
Back to when you were first at the Rovers, we were joined in the First Division. After getting up to the First Division, we were joined by today's opponents, Ayr United, who at that time were managed by one of Scotland's greatest characters ever, Ali McLeod. And I always remember when we played against Ayr, it was never an easy game, and players that stood out for me were Henry Templeton and John Sludden. Yeah, some memories from you of games against Ayr in those early Rovers days.
Well, like yourself, it was always John Sludden and I was directly against Henry Templeton, and the two of them were brilliant. John Sludden, when he was back to goal, was just a bit unplayable, but Henry Templeton, you had to chase him all over the park. So Ayr United was always good games. As you say, Ali McLeod was just a great character, but for him in one dugout and me, Frank, in the other dugout was quite funny. But Ayr United was always great games. Ayr United and Raith Rovers, two similar clubs. Neil, I think two teams from the seaside. The stadiums when it was the old Starts Park was very similar to Somerset, but Somerset was. I always remember my first memory of Somerset was when in the 70s I went down to watch Celtic playing Ayr United. Kenny Dalglish was playing for Celtic and Johnny Doyle was playing for Ayr United, and the only thing I can remember really about that game was the Ayr United fans singing to Hughie Sprott, Shuggy Shuggy swinging the bar, and you seen this mad goalkeeper swinging about in the crossbar when the ball was up the other side of the pitch. And funny enough, I ended up playing with Hugh Sprott at Motherwell, and that was my first memory of Somerset in the 1970s.
Right. Funnily enough, Hugh Sprott, very experienced goalkeeper. You then played with Hamish McAlpine, who also liked to swing on the bar on occasion, and also possessed a fine moustache like Hugh Sprott.
Two very good characters as well. And I played in the game that Hamish scored. Hamish scored a goal down at Kilmarnock for us in 1-4-3, straight for a kick out. And I also remember playing in a reserve game for Motherwell. It was at Old Love Street, and Hugh Sprott played outside left for the full game. So we were players short, and Shug he played outside left, which was quite funny. And he done okay as well. But two great characters, two great goalkeepers as well.
Test of your memory here, Jock. Who was the goalie that Hamish scored against? Who was playing for Killian goal that day?
Barry Holland.
Yeah, exactly. I get laughed at for remembering stuff like that. But well done.
I do remember it because did we know what 3-0 or something like that? We went well in front, and it was a nice sunny day. And then Kilmarnock pulled it back, and the rain came on. It started to rain, and I think so. Hamish got the ball and kicked it up the field. And Barry Holland was just a young goalkeeper at the time. I think he played for Scotland under 21s.
Yeah. And
he must have took a rush of blood, and he thought he was going to catch it, and it just skidded over his head into the net, and it was really good. Especially against Kilmarnock, who turned out one of your big rivals at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. After you left Raith Rovers, you were at Raith Rovers for 7 years, and then over the next 6 years, you played for 7 more clubs. Weirdly enough, not long after leaving Rovers, you ended up at Ayr United. Who were the characters that you played with at Somerset Park, and did you enjoy that experience?
I was only there for half a season. It was the year they won the league. But when I left Rovers, it was difficult, Neil, to try and fill fill the space up because that's such a good time at Raith Rovers, and with the team spirit of the dressing room and everything else. And I couldn't really settle anywhere. It's like the incident probably affected me more than I thought at the time. And I just wanted everywhere to be like Starks Park. Tried to make every club that was at similar to what it was. But when I went to United, it was probably the closest you'll get to the Raith dressing room that year, because Daz was the manager. Daz was the manager who must have took Frank Connor kind of style management, and then Ronnie Coyle was the captain. So Ronnie, God bless him, was his usual organising the night suit, organising the kitty, find money for players. So the kitty money was quite good because Ronnie always organised. If you didn't have a tie on, you get fined. If you were late for training, you get fined. So it was very similar. And there was guys like Smudger was there as well.
Yeah.
Ronnie, Henry Smith, Big Willie Jimison, he was there, and a couple of them was young boy Greg Hood, who played for Scotland under 21s, with Big Sean Dennis. Was a good young player as well. And I think I said to you the other day that Big Mark Campbell was there, but Mark was a couple of years later.
Yeah.
I was getting mixed up when I went down to see United when Daz was the manager.
Yeah.
And Big Sparky was there. But it was very similar to the dressing room. As I said earlier on, United and Raith Rovers are two great clubs with a lot of things in common.
Yeah. And very similar stadiums as well, the old Starks Park, similar size of stadium and similar style of building and pitch and all the rest of it. So it must have been great at the end of that half season you were there to see your good pal as skipper lift the league trophy for the Honest Men.
I love Big Ronnie. It's sad that he's not here. Where's the now? Because he's just taken far too young. But it was good. It was great to see Ronnie, because Ronnie, I think when Ronnie left Rovers as well, there was a wee bit of sadness when he left as well, the way it ended for him as well. Because we always spoke about his good pal Jim Clark, who we always spoke about. When I was just about to sign a contract before I left, the contract it was there, but it really wasn't there. We spoke about would be due a testimonial, and we spoke about maybe having a double testimonial, like the two together, but it never worked out that way. So
exactly, yeah. Another one of your former teammates, somebody you played with fairly briefly, Julian Brodo. He co-commentated with us on RaithTV a year or so ago, a year and a half ago, and as a fullback himself, or somebody who evolved into a fullback, he was amazed at the amount of running that our left back and right back did the game that he commentated with us. So a question for yourself: the wing back role has evolved over time, and you were no stranger to the opposition's final third when you played at right back. How much do you think the game has changed? And if you were Jock McStay in your 20s now, would you have a place in this Rovers team that's playing today?
Well, funny because Jimmy Nicholl did play three centre halves. There was Ronnie, John, and George McGeechee, who was another unsung hero, and myself and Jason Rowbottom or Julian bombing up the left. So we kind of played that way quite a few times. But I mean, I loved getting forward now, and I can almost remember the game. I don't know if you can remember. We played Partick Thistle, and we were 4-0 up.
I do.
I'd scored 2 goals, and Dad had scored 2 goals. So we kind of had a bit of banter on it, and I was chasing the hat trick to get a hat trick before him because I was saying I want to get the ball. So I was that busy bombing up and down the pitch. I think Partick got it back to 4-3, and Frank was going mental.
Yeah.
I was going mental because I was too busy trying to bomb up the pitch and try to get a hat trick just to get one over Daz, but we ended up winning that game 4-3. So
everyone talks about the atmosphere, the banter, dressing room camaraderie, and all the rest of it. You've been part of some great dressing rooms over the years. Is there any pranks by players or motivational methods of managers from the dressing room that you'd like to share with us?
It's just putting deep heat, putting your boxers and things like that, getting your socks cut up the wall. I think the best one is probably the one Jim Clark will tell you about, him and Ronnie stitched up Peter Henderson, the Tiger advert. Have you not heard that one?
I don't think I have. No, go for it.
Peter got interviewed after one of the games, and he was like, Peter's got the broad that Glasgow accent. And after the interview, the boys seen it, and Jim Clark spoke to Colin, and he's got all this Taggart BBC letterheading typed up to say to Silky, would you like to come and play a part in Taggart? We like your accent, and you'd be good for it. And I think Peter fell for it. Jim Clark knows the story better than most, but Peter fell for it, and he thought he was getting a part in Taggart.
I'll get Jim to share that one. Final question, Jock, before we wrap it up. You're obviously a Hall of Famer for Raith Rovers, and you're one of Rovers fans of my age favourite players, just because your dedication, your time with the Rovers. How do you reckon you became so close to the Rovers, given that you're from the Glasgow area, you're not a Fifer? What was it about the place that makes you want to keep coming back as a supporter, even to things like cup finals in 1994?
I struck it off with the fans right away, Neil, because I gave everything I had. I gave everything I had for them, and they did support me, even if I had a bad game. I never ever can't recall getting stick after the Raith Rovers fans, which helped me as a player as well. And speaking to the fans, there's no point in giving players stick, because you'll just make them worse if you try and help them, because nobody tries to make mistakes. But I think that's probably what the worst thing that happened to me when I left, Niall, because I had a great rapport with the fans, and they helped me. The fans helped me no end to be the player that I was for Raith Rovers, because I'd have run through a brick wall for the team and the fans, and we used to drink with the fans and that after the game, down the nights out and things like that as well. And I think we had a lot of time for them, and they're always good to me, and I'll always be grateful for that as well. And that's why I love going back. I was at the 94 Cup final in the Raith Rovers end, and I was also at the Ramsden Cup final. I was at that game as well. I actually stayed up with Dennis and Jim O'Connell. We had a good night out that night. We sat at Easter Road. I was at that game as well. So if they get to another cup final, I'll probably have to go as a lucky mascot.
Fair enough. Yeah, that works for me. Only a couple of minutes left, Jock, and something I just remembered that I didn't ask you before. Obviously, you're a Celtic man, and obviously your cousin Paul played for Celtic in the cup final against Rovers. Does Rovers winning the cup final against Celtic, does it come up in family get-togethers or conversations with your extended family?
Well, but it was when Paul came back for Ronnie's game, because Paul's in Australia now.
Yeah.
It was I was in a no-lose position that day. That Celtic won, if Rovers won, I was happy as well. So, but the only sad thing for me that day was it was Paul that missed the penalty. It wouldn't have really made it as bad if it was somebody else, but I really couldn't lose that day. So it was a win-win for me at the cup final that day. You know, we could talk all night and talk about stories, real stories, and it's brilliant talking about the Rovers. And I mean, any chance I get back up there, I would go in the Hall of Fame nights. It's just a special club, and that's why I think the fans, I got on great with the fans, because it was as if I was one of them. And then
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On the pitch as well. So I really enjoyed my time up there, and I'll always look forward to going back.
Yeah, well, I look forward to speaking to you properly in person, Jock. Not over a Zoom call when we're back at Raith Rovers. I hope it's. I don't think it'll be this season, but I hope it's early next season.
Hopefully, Paul.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. you look after yourself, stay safe, as everyone says, and like I said, we'll see you at Raith Rovers very soon, mate.